The assassination of Tom Mboya, the tragic end of a Kenyan visionary. Thomas Joseph Mboya, who was assassinated on a warm Saturday afternoon exactly 56 years ago on July 5, 1969, was more than just a politician. He was a natural statesman and a vibrant symbol of Kenya's potential. His brutal, daylight murder in the heart of Nairobi was a watershed moment that irrevocably altered the course of the young nation's history, signaling a perilous shift toward tribalism, paranoia, and political intolerance. Mboya's death remains one of Kenya's most profound and unresolved tragedies, forever shrouding the post-independence promise in suspicion and mourning. The natural politician, a cut above the rest. While most politicians struggle to understand and solve the needs and wants of voters, for Tom Mboya this came naturally. He possessed a rare blend of intellectual brilliance, charismatic public speaking, and a deep, visceral connection to the African working class. In the colonial period, nothing was as enchanting as watching Mboya debate his colleagues in the Legislative Council, LegCo, as he pushed the African agenda vigorously and passionately. As an opposition politician in the colonial parliament, Rateng Andura Jamatenga, as he was known to his close friends and family members, was simply a cut above the rest. His easy wit and quick repartee while debating, and his ability to use the elegant put-down against the colonial government's side, were just splendid. Even his white colleagues admitted in private that they struggled to debate him, recognizing his exceptional intellect and legalistic skill. His reputation extended far beyond Kenya's borders. A telling anecdote involves the Secretary-General of the British Trade Union Congress, who visited Kenya and negotiated with Mboya to end a labor dispute. Upon returning, he reportedly told the Minister for Defense and Internal Security, "Ooh, my goodness. That boy, if only he had a white face, I would have taken him with me to England and made him my successor." This statement, however condescending, was a stark acknowledgement of Mboya's immense political talent and leadership quality. The voice of the workers, the power of solidarity. Mboya's foundation lay in the trade union movement, which he brilliantly transformed into a key weapon in the fight against colonialism and a platform for his national political ambitions. He was an electrifying orator, and it was quite enthralling to watch Mboya address a political rally or a congregation of striking workers. His cool command of the crowd, the laughter and shouts he elicited at the right places, the singing in between, and the easy switching from formal English to captivating Kiswahili drove the crowd into a frenzy. In the run-up to independence, Mboya always met workers every week at the Solidarity Building, a crucial hub he constructed with funds donated by his international friends and labor allies. Very early in the morning, he would stand on the balcony and shout, "Uhuru," and the workers below would respond, "Uhuru na Kenyatta." Then he would shout, "Uhuru," once more, and they would roar back, "Uhuru na Tom Mboya." The workers would then break into the song, "Tunataka Jomo. Jomo, Jomo, Tunataka Jomo Kiongozi Wetu." Having been psyched up, they all departed for their various places of work, cheerful and hopeful that Uhuru, freedom, was just around the corner. This weekly ritual demonstrated his status as a co-equal national hero alongside Jomo Kenyatta in the eyes of the common worker. To understand and solve the needs of his people, Mboya made himself uniquely accessible to everyone who needed assistance and rarely walked around with a visible bodyguard. In Nairobi, apart from his official office at the Treasury, one could also see him in his private office, which was located on Victoria Street, now known as Tom Mboya Street. Upon entering the building, one walked up the stairs then past an Indian shop called Artistic Tailors. The corridors were narrow, and often jammed with Kenyans from different backgrounds seeking help. Their dressing ranged from elegant to shabby, to patched pants and rain-sodden hats. Otieno Nundu, the clerk, recorded the appointments before guiding the visitors to Mboya. Mboya was always at the office early and stayed until late. There was always a long line of people at the door when he arrived, but he always saw all of them, reflecting a work ethic and a commitment to public service that few of his peers matched. The star minister in the gathering storm. After independence in 1963, Mboya became President Jomo Kenyatta's most committed and able minister. Serving first as Minister for Labor and later as Minister for Economic Planning and Development, he was arguably the intellectual and operational engine of the new government, responsible for writing some of the nation's key development blueprints, most notably Sessional Paper No. 10 of 1965 on African socialism and its application to planning in Kenya. He was, in essence, the technocratic face of modern, independent Kenya, with an international reputation that dwarfed most of his cabinet colleagues. However, his success and brilliance made him a towering target. As the political landscape in Kenya began to fracture along ethnic lines following the split with Vice President Jaramogi Oginga Odinga in 1966, Mboya, though an ethnic Luo like Odinga, remained steadfastly loyal to Kenyatta. This put him in a treacherous position. The tribalists who had used him to help kick out Odinga were now turning their attention to him. He was a threat not because he was disloyal, but because he was simply too powerful, too intelligent, and too popular to be contained by the nascent forces of Kikuyu ethno-nationalism that were consolidating power around Kenyatta. He was a national leader in a time when politics was increasingly being reduced to tribal factions. The signs of his isolation and the threat to his life were evident. He found it increasingly difficult to access Kenyatta, the president being shielded by a ring of powerful, ethnically aligned advisors. His movements were constantly monitored, and his letters were often opened by the special branch, intelligence services. He was being actively frustrated in his ministerial duties by those conniving behind his back. By 1969, Mboya had already given up on the trajectory of Kenyan politics and was planning to quit the government. A week before his assassination, he met with Sir Michael Blundell, a prominent Kenyan farmer and chairman of Kenya Brewery, and confided in him that he had had enough. He complained he was heading nowhere politically and was planning to quit for a less fraught job at the United Nations. Blundell, recognizing Mboya's vital importance, urged him to stay on, arguing that Kenya still desperately needed him and that he was still too young to retire from national service. The fatal return and the last trip. Despite the mounting tensions and palpable danger, Mboya continued to discharge his duties. The week before his death, he flew to Addis Ababa in his capacity as Minister for Economic Planning and Development to represent Kenya at a UN meeting. During this trip, some of his friends, who had already received disturbing rumors about his impending assassination, tried to advise him not to return to Kenya but to fly directly to the UK, where he was due to attend a function he wasn't particularly interested in. Mboya was resigned to his fate and rejected the idea. He told his friends that if someone was truly determined to assassinate him, flying to the UK would only postpone his death and not stop it. This poignant statement suggests a man who knew he was marked but refused to flee his country or his destiny. He returned to Kenya and, on Saturday, July 5, 1969, a day after returning from Addis, he spent the morning in his office at the Treasury building. Then, at midday, in a final gesture of his typical independence and perhaps defiance of the restrictive security detail, he dismissed his bodyguard and driver for the weekend. He drove himself, alone, to downtown Nairobi. The assassination, a nation's nightmare. Mboya's destination was mundane and heartbreakingly ordinary. He was going to buy a small bottle of Alpha Kerry lotion for dry skin at Cheney's Chemists on Government Road, now Moi Avenue. The time was around 12:45 p.m. As Mboya stood framed in the doorway, bidding goodbye to Mrs. Cheney, the chemist, the assassin, waiting outside, opened fire. The sudden burst of violence forced Mboya to stagger and collapse into the hands of Mrs. Cheney. The assassin then dashed around Mboya's parked white Mercedes-Benz and disappeared into the busy Saturday street, melting into the confused crowd. Confused and frantic, Mrs. Cheney poured water on Mboya's face, a desperate and futile effort to revive him, as she waited for an ambulance to arrive. Some minutes later, Dr. Rafiq Chaudhry, a friend to the Cheneys, arrived and began attempting to resuscitate Mboya as horrified crowds gathered, recognizing the fallen leader. The scene was one of chaos, disbelief, and mounting national grief. Women wept openly as the ambulance finally arrived to take the critically wounded Mboya away. The final moments and the post-mortem. Being a Saturday, the emergency services were operating on a skeleton staff. Only one senior nurse was manning the accident and emergency department when the ambulance arrived. At first, she didn't realize it was Mboya, the most famous face in the country after the president. When she finally did, she rushed around summoning doctors. A European doctor eventually arrived and began examining Mboya. After failing to find a pulse, he folded his stethoscope and simply walked away. The man who had been the youthful embodiment of Kenya's future was gone. Mboya's body was later transferred to the city mortuary, where a post-mortem was carried out by Dr. Rogoff at 4:30 p.m. The pathologist's report revealed the brutal finality of the attack and the precise mechanism of death. Dr. Rogoff found 2 bullet wounds in the body. One was in the upper left chest, just below the collarbone. The bullet that caused death penetrated Mboya's body, was deflected by the first rib in a downwards direction, passed through a small area of lung tissue in front of the aorta, and then tore an irregular hole in the arch of the aorta. The tearing of the arch of the aorta, the body's main artery carrying blood from the heart, caused rapid and fatal internal bleeding, leading to Mboya's swift death. The official investigation and subsequent trial would focus on the assassin, but the nation's suspicion immediately turned to the powerful forces who saw Mboya as the greatest obstacle to their political designs. The legacy of an unresolved crime. The assassination of Tom Mboya plunged Kenya into a crisis. The identity of the alleged assassin, a man named Nahashon Isaac Njenga Njoroge, was quickly established. When he was apprehended, his only alleged statement was the chilling question, "Why don't you go after the big man?" This statement, though often disputed by the official narrative, solidified the widespread belief that Njenga Njoroge was merely a hired gun and that the actual orchestrators of the plot belonged to the highest echelons of government. Njenga Njoroge was quickly tried, convicted, and hanged in November 1969. The trial was criticized for its speed and its failure to investigate the conspiracy behind the murder. The refusal to pursue the big man has left Mboya's murder an unresolved political crime, ensuring its poisonous legacy endured for decades. Mboya's death marked the end of the nationalist, multi-ethnic dream for Kenya. His passing eliminated the most capable, internationally connected, and future-oriented alternative to the growing forces of ethnic patronage and totalitarian rule that characterized the post-Mboya Kenyatta era. He remains an enduring symbol of a Kenya that might have been a modern, meritocratic, and unified nation led by competence rather than tribe. His tragic end stands as a permanent scar on the nation's political soul.